So Ryan Day learned his lesson. When did he learn that lesson is our next question as we welcome in Tony Gerdeman from BuckeyeHuddle.com. Gerd, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
Now, Day did clarify he wasn't talking specifically about any one game, but certainly there are a couple of games that jump to mind as could have been when he learned that lesson that you can't pass your way to victory.
Yeah, things he's picked up along the road. It was mentioned the Purdue game in 2018 when he was the offensive coordinator, throwing the ball 70 sometimes. But there's a head coach on that team that could have told him, "Hey, let's run the ball." I think back to we probably all just immediately think to like Michigan or whatever, but you can look at the 2021 Oregon game where they're throwing the ball a lot, and just watching the Maryland game at times where maybe they don't stick to the run enough. And we have talked to Ryan Day over the last couple of years about the difficulty in finding a rhythm with the offense. And I think some of that comes when you're not running the ball as much as you want. And I will say that under Ryan Day in his 4 years, Ohio State is the only team in the Big Ten to finish in the top 4 rushing every year. And so they have done it, and they've led the Big Ten in rushing by a wide margin in 2019 and 2020, but they have not materially done anything near that, and especially now they're way down. So it is, they have to throw the ball to move the ball, but it would be so much better for them if they were able to run it and then they could throw when they want instead of when they have to.
It's been said good teams win, great teams cover. Well, the Buckeyes did cover against Maryland. Why all the hand-wringing over a 20-point win over an undefeated team?
Well, because it wasn't perfect, and perfect is the metric. And not for the coaches, not for anybody else, but for the fan base and the media. And there's always something to point out. Even part of Kyle McCord going like 17 for 22 over, over the final portion of the game. You still have a late throw to Marvin Harrison that should have been a touchdown. You have a late throw to Julian Fleming that should have been a touchdown. So even on the game's biggest plays in terms of yardage, you can look at it and say, yeah, that 58 yarder should have been 80. That 42 yarder should have been 60 or whatever, and they both should have been touchdowns. So there's little critiques here and there, even for when things go pretty well, but there's so many more when things aren't going well, and those kind of stick out. And I went into the Wednesday interview or Tuesday interview session just thinking, should I ask Ryan Day, what's going right? Because I know he's just going to be bombarded with everything that's going wrong. I'd be like, what are you happy with? Because at this point in the season, there are plenty of things to be upset about, but as they say, you're still undefeated. The bottom line is to win the games, and that's what they've done.
Well, let's continue that line of thinking. What is going right for Ohio State? They're the only team in the nation not to give up an explosive play, a 40-yarder or more. That continued against Maryland. Yes, the Terps did get 17 points, but the defense is doing what this newfangled defense is supposed to do, not giving up big plays and getting the opposing team's offense off the field.
Yeah, you're talking about the number 3 scoring defense in the nation, and that's the perfection, the perfect metric type of thing that we just talked about with offense. There are still plenty of questions of Jim Knowles, like what's wrong with the linebackers? What's the problem with this? So there are still things that, maybe it's a hyper focus and you lose sight of the fact that this defense has been very, very good. They gave up 2 touchdown drives against Maryland. One was a 30-yarder after a botched snap of a punt. But yeah, the lack of big plays that they've allowed is significant. I think they gave up maybe three plays of 20 yards against Maryland. Last year against Maryland, they gave up 8 plays of 20 yards or more. So that's one little metric, one little sliver of time, but the opponent is the same, and you see the difference there. And the inability or the inability for the opponents to find soft spots, weak spots in this Ohio State defense has been significant. Just rewatching I think the longest pass play was a little drag across the middle, like behind the line of scrimmage, and Denzel Burke is chasing the play, and he's trying to dodge 3 pickers, basically 3 Maryland receivers trying to pick him, and that's what it takes to get open and make big plays against this Ohio State defense. And I thought the front 4 stepped up as well. They were getting after Tagovailoa, And it was just a really connected effort, and you can't say enough about the way the secondary is playing right now either.
Absolutely. Josh Proctor, the big pick six, was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week, and also some big hits from Josh Proctor. And Ryan Day basically said, hey, he is the best version of Josh Proctor right now, and they're glad to see that happening.
Yeah, 6 years in, and you're seeing the guy that everybody expected back in 2018 and 2019 when he was just a young pup. And the big hitting is what Buckeye fans have come to expect, seeing just glimpses of it over the years. But back when he was a freshman and a sophomore, when we were talking to coaches, they were talking about his range and his ability to cover and his ability to anticipate. It's just been a situation where he's not been consistent enough, hasn't been mature enough to study as much as he needed to in terms of the film work and things like that. And when we talked to him after the game, he talked about his pick six and the reading and the film study that he did, knowing that that was going to be the play and knowing that that is where Talia Tagovailoa liked to throw the ball in that situation. So he was watching for that and he knew it was coming and he jumped it. And he said he wouldn't have been able to do that in prior years. So that gives you an idea. This is his last go round finally with Ohio State, 6 years in, like I said. So he's putting his best foot out there and he's prepared for this, and he doesn't want to end it any other way than he's doing so right now. And it's taken a bit longer, but like he said, when we talked to him on Saturday night, I'm here now. And I think that's a very apt quote for a guy who has taken some time. He's been a starter, he's been benched, he's been hurt, he's been everything. And now I wonder where the Buckeyes would be without him.
There is no doubt that Ohio State has been spoiled over the last dozen years with generational talent on the defensive line with the Bosa brothers and Chase Young, and there hasn't necessarily been that next great one. Zach Harrison was supposed to be that one. He's in the NFL, so he wasn't that bad. JT Tuilamoau was the next great one. Are we starting to see JT getting to that point?
He's starting to step up in key moments, and it was interesting listening to Jim Knowles talk about him. And this is something he said before in terms of asking him to do more or do whatever. He's like, I leave him alone, and he knows what he's doing. And obviously that's Larry Johnson's job anyway, in terms of the defensive line. But he's a guy that makes plays. And he said it a couple of weeks ago. And I think Ryan Day said the same thing. You can count on him to make big plays when the game is on the line. And that's what he's done. So you basically, it's almost like you're afraid to take him out of the game, because when you do, you might be taking that play away from yourself, and you're asking somebody else to make plays like JT Tuimoloau, and not a lot of people can do that. But his ability, his strength against the run has been impressive. His ability to just get down the line, and when he's coming from the backside on a carry, and like the running back is not able to get away from him at this point. So he's really stepping up, and it's just about right in time with Penn State on the schedule in 2 weeks.
Before they get to Penn State, they've got Purdue. We know the history of the spoiler makers with Ohio State, particularly in West Lafayette. Is there extra reason to be concerned with Purdue's history, or is this a Boilermaker team that is incapable of pulling off one of those upsets?
Every Boilermaker team that has pulled off an upset against Ohio State has been a Boilermaker team that was incapable of doing so, and yet somehow they still did it. And Ryan Day was there in 2018. Josh Proctor was there in 2018. Xavier Johnson may have been there in 2018, but probably not, since he was a walk-on. But there's enough experienced people in the program and on the team who were there, who experienced that. And Ryan Day is the only head coach to not lose at West Lafayette since World War II, basically. So this is something that he knows about it. I don't think he said he's talked to the team about anything extra, because you don't want to put maybe too much of something. You don't want to add to the juju that might be in there, and so you kind of not speak it into existence. But this is a place that Ohio State has gone to with very good teams and lost to pretty bad teams. And doesn't matter the coach, doesn't matter the year, doesn't matter the weather. If you go in expecting it to be easy, then you've already lost the first round.
One of the themes Ryan Day kept on going back to on Tuesday during his time with the media is we've got to get better. Every aspect of the game, every position group, coaches have to get better. And he talked quite a bit about accountability, beginning with himself in terms of the special teams, in terms of the offensive play calling and the offensive line.
so much of that to me was coach speak, because these were pointed questions about the offensive line and about special teams. And rather than throw those two areas under the bus completely, you do the old coaching standby, which, well, there is no perfect position right now. We all have to get better. Nobody is here that is satisfied, or nobody has finished the job. So you're able to, and the thing is, it's true. Nobody is playing to their utmost. Nobody has reached their pinnacle at this point. The potential is still there for every single person in the room to be higher. But when he does say things like, the offensive line is not using their hands properly, and he does start to critique little areas here and there, then he just doesn't want to throw an entire unit under the bus, or these players. And so then you have to encompass that with, everybody's struggling, or everybody has some issues. And so I think it's a fatherly thing type of thing that he does there, head coaching type of thing that he does there. But the offensive line, the special teams, I know Ohio State gets a lot of grief for having a special teams coordinator. They're not the only one that has a special teams coordinator that coaches no other positions, or has no other positions listed. But that's something that Day likes, and he likes having that person focused on special teams. But when you have illegal formations, and just every year there's a little something odd, somebody jumping over the line where leaping is a penalty, and yet you still have Taraja Mitchell doing it a couple of years ago. Just these odd things, a long snapper not being aware of a fake, things like that, where if you have a dedicated coordinator, you would think the players would be more dedicated to doing things correctly, and so would the coaches. But it's been an issue up and down, here and there. Not the Ohio State special teams are bad, but when you have a coordinator, there's going to be more eyes on, again, getting back to that perfection thing. Not that anybody expects it to be perfect, but as Ryan Day said, it has to be a weapon for him, and I don't know that it is.
One position group he didn't quite throw under the bus, maybe was prodding a little bit, was the second string offensive line. Disappointed that those guys haven't pushed the first stringers, and that's maybe one of the reasons why this offensive line hasn't quite gelled yet, because they haven't gotten the push from the backups to get those starters a little bit better.
Yeah, and the gap is still as wide as it was when they named the starters, and so that is a concern. But as he said, hey, if you want a job, go take it, because clearly the offensive line is not playing well enough to have everything solidified in terms of there's no way somebody can come in and take the job. And the depth that they have talked about in the past, liking, they like it so much, but only so much. And I'm wondering if at some point, is Luke Montgomery, a freshman from Findlay, does he get more involved? Or at this point, because my thinking was, at this point, you can't really just start over or throw somebody new in. But it seemed like Ryan Day saying, no, we need the best version of the offensive line. So if that means somebody new gets in there, then you do it. Because at this point, even though the offensive line, maybe this is as much as they will gel. Like maybe this is them gelled. And if so, then you need to throw that gel out and try something else. Because right now, what they're doing, unless they start fixing things, like this version is not going to be able to run the ball against Penn State. It's not going to be able to run the ball against Michigan. And if you can't run the ball against those two teams, you're going to need your defense. You're going to need Kyle McCord to make plays all 4 quarters, and Marvin Harrison to make plays all 4 quarters. It's just a difficult way to win against the two other top teams in the Big Ten East.
And perhaps telling against Maryland was the fact that Luke Montgomery did not see the field against the Terps after playing in the first 4 games. Perhaps they're trying to preserve a red shirt for Montgomery. Looks like they're going to try and redshirt Dallin Hayden, the running back, and that was something that was brought up, the fact that maybe there are some guys out there that aren't playing because they're trying to preserve an extra year of eligibility.
Yeah, and with Dallin Hayden, he came on in that Maryland game last year, I think 26 carries for 140 yards in the second half alone of that one, which is incredible for a true freshman. It's pretty incredible for anybody. But yeah, the way they're doing it with him, they don't want to. He's going to be the third running back behind Chip Trayanum and Mayan Williams when Travion Henderson is out. So like to throw him out there for 3, 4, 5 carries, they didn't want to do it. And I think one of the reasons why is he can play in November. Like he can play 4 games still. And so you don't want to use those games right now when they went through what they went through last year. I think that Michigan game, and having to put Xavier Johnson at running back against both Michigan and Georgia, like those scars don't heal. And not that Xavier Johnson is a bad player. They had to put a wide receiver at running back last year towards the end of the year. And that's something that I don't think you get over too quickly. And so when you have, I, I would equate it to like a September call up, but it's more of like a November call up with Dallin Hayden, because I will be shocked if he doesn't play. But as the third or fourth or fifth running back, there are no carries. Like Mayan Williams is the third running back. He is getting almost no carries this season. So, good luck to anybody behind Mayan Williams at this point.
On Saturday, Ryan Day won his 50th game at Ohio State in just 56 attempts, the second quickest to hit the 50 mark behind his predecessor, Urban Meyer. He'll have to try and get 51 on the road against Purdue. Ryan Day's never lost to an unranked team in his time at Ohio State. I want to thank our guest tonight, Tony Gerdeman from BuckeyeHuddle.com. Gerd, thank you once again.
Thanks, Mark.